All right, everybody, welcome to the Service Hub, where we give you your tips and tricks for your service business success. Today, we have the privilege of having Nellie Akalp on the phone with us today. Nellie, give us a hello to our audience. Let them know you're there.
Good morning, good afternoon to all of you on the East Coast. Good morning to all of you on the West Coast. It's a pleasure to be on Service Hub.
Yes, we are very excited to have Nellie with us, and she's a unique guest to our show in the sense that she comes from from an entrepreneurial background, which isn't unique. However, her story is a little bit different. She comes from the legal meshed with tech side of the world as the CEO and co-founder of Corpnet.com.
Correct.
Okay, so the CEO and co-founder of Corpnet.com, and they provide all sorts of legal documentation and everything that you guys would need in order to set up, run your business, and avoid a lot of those legal pitfalls. But really, Nellie, we wanted to ask you a little bit about your story, how you got started in your business, before we jump into some of the specifics for advising some of these listeners. But tell us a little bit about your background. Where did this all come from?
Great. So I am an entrepreneur by trade. I went to Cal State Northridge, got my bachelor's degree in business administration with an emphasis in marketing, and then decided after I met my husband and current business partner at Cal State, we both decided that we wanted to go to law school. We got into separate law schools and graduated law school back in 1998. And during law school, my husband came up with a vision of offering online incorporation, LLC filings, and business startup services to the mass instead of charging $5,000 a pop and really, in my opinion, raping the consumer with horrendous legal fees where you can do all of this online. So we started our first company back from our 2-bedroom apartment back in 1997, grew that business to where it was nearly doing $1 million in gross sales. And fast forward to 2005, our first company was acquired by a publicly traded company. And we took some time off and decided, wow, what a blessing. By that time in 2005, we had some children. We wanted to focus on our then growing children. And so we took the bait, we sold the company, took some time off. We're under a non-compete for 3 years. And after the non-compete ran out, I really realized that entrepreneurship is really a passion for me. And I realized I was too young, too passionate, and frankly, too bored to take on an early retirement. And I really, really still, the idea of helping people start businesses and really sticking with this industry really resonated with me, and I wasn't done with it. So in 2009, we came up with the only single term out there, Corpnet, that was still available as a domain name, and we decided to launch Corpnet.com. And currently, Corpnet provides any and all business owners, entrepreneurs, business professionals representing clients with the most comprehensive, cost-effective services when it comes to setting up a corporation or an LLC, starting a business, and we provide the services in all 50 states. We also provide many, many other services to people and companies who also own an existing business and would like to keep their business in compliance throughout the lifetime of their business. So you can think of us as a one-stop shop for any small business who wants to start a business in any of the 50 states or who has an existing business and wants to expand it into multiple states or keep it in compliance, or both.
This stuff is really interesting to me because I think it's one of those things that's like underground to a lot of entrepreneurs. Like, we don't think about this stuff. We think about growing things and selling things and marketing things and hiring people, fixing stuff. So this is really interesting. I mean, Trevor and I and our other business partner and I, we have questions about this stuff too. And so I'm excited.
Yeah.
Come over. I'd love to help.
Yeah, no, it's true. Well, and I mean, I think it's awesome that you're also, just a little personal highlight. You're doing business with your husband. That's phenomenal. What a great way to live.
Seriously.
It is. And, I'll tell you, it's not for everybody, but we actually met as study partners. So, in the last 25 years that we've known each other, it's always been a great marriage, a great partnership. And, what keeps it real and keeps it super, super, I would say healthy, so that we do have a healthy marriage and a healthy business relationship, is that we don't really mix roles, and we try to keep it very linear. And he's more the back end technical side of things, I'm more the front end marketing sales. So it's a good marriage, it's a good relationship, and knock on wood, it works for us.
That's so cool. That's
awesome.
so cool. I would imagine it being like difficult to keep like work at work and home at home, because it's all everybody's on the same team. And
and you're absolutely right, because a lot of times we can't.
Yeah.
Technically, when you are, when you're a small business owner, when you're an entrepreneur, you are the business. You are married to your business, and oftentimes, the effects of the business come into your personal life. But as a grown woman who's been doing this for a very long time, you have to learn and train your brain to try to kind of shut off at some point.
Yeah.
And that's what we try to do. We're not perfect at it, but we try.
Yeah. No, I'm sure. I think about my own situation, and like my wife is a stay-at-home mom, and some days I come home and I'm just like, I don't want to talk about work at all. That's interesting. I bet that's fun. But you have common ground. You guys can talk about stuff. When you go to dinner, you can write it off because you guys are talking about business, right? You're at home and you're eating.
And that has its positives and it does have its negatives. Because I will say that in working with my husband, there's a lot of positives that outweigh the negatives. But for example, one of the negatives is that because of the fact that we work together and we're always really married to our business, our social life tends to suffer a bit, but that's something that we're willing to compromise, because we have a duty and obligation to our children. I have 4 kids. I'm a mother of 4, and raising 4 kids in this day and age is very, very difficult, and it has its challenges. And most important of all, my obligation, my duty to my kids is to provide them a really, really healthy, well-balanced lifestyle. And as a result, for that reason, we tend to give up, that idea of socializing in exchange for growing a business and becoming more successful.
Yeah, no, and I think that's something that we don't often touch on in this show. We did with Josh Latimer when he was on the call, is kind of that balance in life of, where's my business sit? Where does my family sit? And remembering, oh, this family or this business is for the family. It's not the other way around. Yeah. And putting in a lot of good, personal policies and boundaries to say, yeah, on this night, that's family night. And on this day, that's date night. And I don't talk about work during these times, I'm being able to raise the hand and the red flag and be like, all right, hold on. We're not talking about, marketing and sales right now. We're making dinner, but yeah, that's awesome.
Well, let's change some gears real quick. Let's talk a little bit about your specialty and what you guys are doing in the industry in regards to helping businesses incorporate or set up their business legally. Let's talk to people that are just getting started, that maybe have started a service business and they're going to their family and friends. What can you advise those people to do, or what would you suggest to them in regards to filing a business entity or setting up a business entity?
So, in my opinion, in light of how easy it has become to start a business online these days, and especially how quickly you can get it done online, in my opinion, and especially for a service-based business, it would behoove them not to get their legal ducks in a row by either setting themselves up as a corporation or LLC. In addition to that, one of the number one benefits of setting a corporation or an LLC is obviously liability protection, asset protection. And then, other benefits include tax savings, added credibility, increased privacy. But one of the main things that I want to touch on in light of the new tax plan that has been passed on, especially for service-based businesses, they are eligible to potential bigger tax savings as a corporation or an LLC. So I would definitely advise all of you guys out there that are, owning a service-based company or about to start a service-based company to really, really check out your benefits and your rights as a business owner to get your company set up as a corporation or an LLC. Talk with your local accountant or CPA, but at the end of the day, it really, really, really is a great form of business entity to have, and getting yourself legally protected, making sure all your legal ducks are in a row, and mainly because you are a service-based company. So first and foremost, you want to minimize that personal liability that you can often be, God forbid, end up on at the wrong end of the lawsuit. So by setting your business up as a corporation or an LLC, you're avoiding the probability and the possibility of being personally liable and having your personal assets up for grabs. God forbid if somebody got a judgment against you or your business. And as a corporation or an LLC, you would not be personally liable if you ran the corporation or LLC in compliance with state laws, because as a corporation or an LLC, you're creating a shield around you as the business owner. It's like a bubble, and you're around the bubble, and really the corporation or LLC, if it wrongs somebody, whoever comes after that business, the business is liable only to the extent of whatever assets are within the business. So let's, for example, say I own a service-based company, I wrong somebody, and the client comes in and sues me. They can't go after my house, my car, my savings, my checking account personally. They can only go after my corporation or LLC. And at the end of the day, in a nutshell, that's really the reason why we encourage business owners to set up corporations and LLCs. First and foremost is liability protection, protection against your personal assets. Number two is obviously potential and greater tax savings, because as a corporation or LLC, you may be entitled to bigger tax savings. Another benefit is added credibility. When people have seen you as a business owner take the necessary steps to incorporate your business or set your business up as an LLC, they're likely to want to do more business with you because they're going to view you as a more established business entity. And last but not least, obviously, is creating a line of business credit under the business, and the greater likelihood of being able to build business credit as a corporation or an LLC.
Yeah, that's super powerful. So I like that example you were talking about, the first one where you set up an LLC or a business and something happens to a customer, or maybe one of your drivers hits somebody and they come after the business. They personally can't sue you, right? They can sue the business. Am I getting that right?
The bottom line is, I'm going to keep it very general. There's always exceptions to the rule, and there can always be exceptions. But generally speaking, if your business is set up properly as a corporation or an LLC, and God forbid, if your business wrongs a third party, that third party can ultimately come after the business and get a judgment against the business. But as long as that business is a corporation or an LLC and has been properly conducting that corporation or LLC, meaning not commingling, not doing it for any type of unlawful business, then the owners of that corporation or LLC would not be personally held liable.
Mm. Yeah, that's important, because you just never know what could happen.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
You're for our audience, there's a lot of home service business owners, or even outside of that, we've had other people that work in different service industries. You just never know what could happen. Like, you could be working on somebody's house and fall through their ceiling or
Yes,
something. You just never know
that is very
what
true.
happened. And so it's important to protect yourself. And
Yes.
I like that. So
Yes.
what are the advantages to setting up an LLC versus like a C Corp?
Great question. So really it boils down to formalities, and it also boils down in some cases as to whether you're a citizen or non-citizen. So let's really, I'd like to take you through the four main types of entities. We have the C corporation, we have the S corporation, which is really a C corporation with a tax designation. We have the limited liability company, and then we have nonprofit corporations, which are for non-profit type of purposes. So for purposes of this podcast, I want to just really focus on the C Corp, the S Corp, and the LLC, because there's tons of other types of entities as well, like a professional corporation, which is really for a service-based individual that owns a type of license, such as a medical doctor, an anesthesiologist, an architect. We won't go through those, but typically a C corporation versus an LLC, it really boils down to formalities. Okay, a C corp is your most formal type of entity. Is a general for-profit corporation. We form it by filing articles of incorporation with the Secretary of State's office in the state that you want to set up the corporation. And typically with a corporation, you have shareholders that are the owners of the corporation. The shareholders will elect a board of directors, who in turn will elect officers to run the corporation. With a C corporation, there is what is called double taxation. So this corporation gets taxed once at the corporate level, and then once the corporation pays out dividends to its shareholders, the shareholders get taxed again. So with the C Corp, there's also more paperwork, more formalities involved. You have the bylaws of the corporation, which really have the rules and responsibilities of the shareholders, with the board of directors, with the officers. It's really the set of rules of the corporation. With a corporation, you also have to maintain corporate resolutions. You have to maintain annual meeting minutes for the corporation. And then there's some state-specific annual compliance filings that have to be upkept with. Moving on to the S corporation, which is again a C corporation, but with an S corp, it's a designation that is given by the IRS that allows the C corporation to be taxed as an S corp in the eyes of the IRS, thereby avoiding that double taxation that is otherwise afforded to C corporations. So with the S corporation, as long as the shareholders of the C corporation qualify and meet the IRS requirements for S corp election, which is basically you have to only have up to 100 shareholders. All the shareholders have to be U.S. citizens or residents. You can only have one type of stock within the corporation, and the election has to be made within 75 business days of the corporation coming into existence or doing business, whichever happens first. So if you meet those requirements and you apply for the S corporation designation and that the IRS grants the election to you, then in the eyes of the IRS, that corporation is treated as an S corp, meaning that all the profits and losses pass through from the corporate level down to the individual level, and the shareholders of that corporation are taxed only once at the individual level. Typically with an S corporation, again, similar to a C corp, tons of formalities. Okay, so really it's the same types of formalities as a C corp, but you're getting that double taxation avoidance by electing S corp status. Moving on to the LLC now, and the difference is that with the LLC, anyone can be a member of the LLC. The LLC is super flexible with respect tax treatment. You can have a single member LLC, you can have a multi-member LLC, you can have both flexibility in profit allocation and also flexibility in tax treatment. In addition to that, the LLC has very, very minimal formalities. The single document that really controls the LLC is called the operating agreement. And really, there are no annual meeting minutes that have to be upkept or filed by an LLC. There are some filings that have to be done at the state level. However, for a small business owner who really wants that liability protection, however, does not want all the corporate formalities and really wants that flexibility in tax treatment, the LLC may be the best way to go, because as a single member LLC by default, the LLC is taxed as a sole proprietorship. Whereas as a multi-member LLC or two-member LLC, the LLC by default is taxed as a partnership. Now, let's say as a single member LLC, that single member does not want to be taxed as a sole proprietorship. Because of that flexibility of tax treatment afforded by an LLC, that member can elect the LLC to be taxed as a C Corp, taxed as an S corporation if they qualify. So lots of flexibility in profit allocation and also tax treatment. In addition, an LLC can really have any type of member, even if you're a non-citizen or non-US resident. So anybody, including an estate, a trust, can be a member of an LLC. So really, at the end of the day, that's the difference between C Corps and LLCs. And then also, in light of the new tax plan that was passed, there are different tax brackets afforded between the Corp and the LLC. So it's something that you definitely want to check with your accountant or CPA before you decide which way to go.
That's interesting. So can you like, let's paint a scenario here. Can you start a business as an LLC? Let's say Trevor and I went into business and created a heating and air company. Okay. And we grew it to $40 million. And, you know, at that point, we're a much bigger operation and we get an offer to buy our business. Is it smart? Is it more likely for us to get a better valuation and somebody to buy us if we're a C Corp or an LLC? Like, tell us a little bit about that.
Great question. So business valuation really at the end of the day boils down to how much the business is making. And whether you're an LLC or a C corporation or an S corporation really will not have any bearing on that. The value of the business is the value of the business. However, there's a couple of questions that come out of this, and I'm really excited you brought it up. So number one is the question that I can extract from this that would be really great for our audience is, one is, if you start out as an LLC, but decide later on down the line it would be better for your business to be an S Corp or a C Corp, can you convert? And the answer to that is absolutely yes, okay? In those states that allow a conversion, we can always convert your current business entity to a different business entity if that state allows a statutory conversion. And if that state doesn't allow it, we could still do it for you by dissolving the current entity and starting the new business entity. That's one question that came out of this. The second question that comes out is, you know, if I am really if I'm really trying to start my business, but from the get-go, my strategy is that I want to be acquired. Should I, from the get-go, start an LLC or should I set up as a C Corp? Generally speaking, with C corporations, most often entrepreneurs who have an exit strategy from the get-go or who are looking for venture capital or some sort of venture funding, it is highly more likely for them to set up a C corporation from the get-go. And these days, again, in light of the flat tax rate that has been reduced down to a 21%, the C Corp may be the way to go, okay? The other question that I could extract from this is the fact that, you know, let's say I ended up starting an LLC, but at one point I decided that, you know, I want to sell my business. would the fact that I'm an LLC versus a C Corp have any bearing on how much they're going to buy my company? And absolutely, it doesn't have any bearing on it, because when somebody comes to, buy your business, which I've been in that situation, they're going to look at your profits and losses, and they're going to evaluate the business based on EBITDA. So really, whether you're an LLC or a C Corp or an S Corp really doesn't have any bearing on how much they're going to put as a value on the business, because that really boils down to how much the business is producing.
Yeah.
And it really boils down to your P&L.
Right. No, that's great. And for those that are listening that don't know what EBITDA is, it's basically valuing your business based off of net profit, right? Correct. There's some other things that go into it, but that's kind of what that is.
Correct.
So that is super interesting. I mean, it's been a conversation we've had as a team, and so I really appreciate the answer. I think it's really powerful and helpful. So
one question that I pulled from what you were talking about. So when we talk about LLCs, we're talking about members, and a member is somebody who's listed there in the document, if I'm not mistaken. And my question is who should you put as members? Like, who qualifies for that, and what kind of I guess benefits or liabilities do they then have, and why would you be a member? Who do you put on there? You don't just want to put like your mom and your dog and your brother, but like who goes on that document?
Okay, so generally speaking, with a small business, really the members are very similar to C corporations that have shareholders. The members of the LLC are the owners of the LLC. So let's say you have a service-based company and you're a single owner. You would be the sole member of that LLC. Now, let's say, for example, Parker and Trevor, you guys as a partnership want to set up an LLC, then you each would be 50-50 members of that LLC, okay? There are different types of LLCs. There are called member-managed LLCs and manager-managed LLCs as well. By default, most states, when we form an LLC, we form it as a member-managed LLC, which is pretty much any member of the LLC is likely to be an owner of the LLC, and they each have equal rights, or they have rights based on their percentage of ownership within the LLC. And then you have what is called manager-managed LLCs, which is typically, again, the owners of the LLC are going to have differences in responsibility. Some may not be actual owners, but just have rights to manage the LLC. Some may have both ownership rights and management rights. So again, at the end of the day, it really boils down to, and to keep it very simple, in answer to your questions, generally speaking, members of an LLC are really owners of the LLC. Okay. Just like shareholders of a corporation are the owners of a corporation.
Okay. And when we're talking about those managers and the ownership type of split, say we go into business together, and Parker's much more of a rock star than I am, so I want to give him like 80% of the business, and I'm acquiring 20% off right off the bat. We know that his list of responsibilities, is significantly larger than what I'm pulling.
That would all be delineated and spelled out within the operating agreement.
Oh, okay.
LLC. If you recall, when I mentioned that with the LLC, the single document that really controls the LLC and really controls and lays out the responsibilities and rights of each of the members of the LLC with respect to the LLC, and also with respect to each other as members of the LLCs within that operating agreement.
Okay.
Everything can be specified black and white. Of course, there is no black and white in some instances, but you can be as specific as possible and get as specific as possible within that operating agreement.
And that would even include things like a vesting period, if you had, for example, like a vesting period for owners. And for those of you who don't understand what a vesting period is, that essentially it's a period of time in which a person is like required to perform a specific duty within the business in order to qualify for their shares to be essentially acquired or owned. A lot of us have it when we go and work for a company. They say, hey, you get this many shares, but it vests over 4 years. you get a portion each year. And so a lot of times when creating a business, as I understand, some of the owners, to ensure that everybody's pulling their weight for the first, 4 years or first year, whatever, they include a vesting period where you put some skin in the game for a time.
Correct.
Cool.
Correct.
Awesome.
So I got a unique question. Let's say you're 5 years into your business and you own 100% of the LLC. Let's say it's an LLC,
Okay.
right? And you've grown to a point where you kind of need some more help. And so you bring in a partner, you bring in somebody else. How do you structure that? Like, do you change the LLC? Does it affect taxes? What happens there?
So generally speaking, me personally, I will not bring anybody in. I mean, that's just my personal rule. I won't partner with anybody and actually give them interest within the company unless they've really proven themselves to me. And they have to bring some skin in the game. So rather than giving them any type of interest, I would just create some sort of a consultancy-based agreement and have that agreement, again, provide them with vesting phantom membership rights or vesting phantom membership shares in case of a corporation as they kind of hit certain milestones in whatever it is that you want them to do within the company. Oftentimes and me included myself, I've made the mistake of bringing on business executives and really off the bat, giving them an interest in the company. And oftentimes that can very much backfire in your face. We've made it a very, very clear rule within my husband and I that, the owners of our company is myself and my husband, and we're the only partners. We can certainly always invite people in to come in. And if they earn the right and do really what they have been retained to do, then they can earn interest, within the company. For example, we've had, ever since the beginning of Corpnet, we have a few key individuals here, other than my husband and myself, that have really started from inception with us. And those few individuals here now have vesting rights within the company, and they know they're locked in here. So when, we do get that, offer where, we're going to, get acquired again, those people are going to make bank, being with us. And for us, we open it up to anybody. It really boils down to, are you going to shine? Are you going to do and go the extra mile where other people aren't going to? And that's what it's about at the end of the day, is really bringing your talent, bringing your set of tools to a business and really shining and making a difference within that business. And if you do make that difference, then absolutely you can earn a piece of that business, but it doesn't really need to be in the form of shares within the company. It could be structured in a different way so that, whoever your partner is can maintain autonomy, and, it could be between you two as far as the actual, business goes.
So essentially, if I owned a business, 100% of it, and I started it, and a year in, I brought on somebody, and he's a key player, and 5 years later, he's stuck with me. He's helped me grow the business.
You can offer them stock options. That's typically the way to go. With any key employee. I mean, there's a ton of different ways that you can do it. Typically what we do is, if it's somebody that we know is going to be a key individual within the company, then, we'll create a consultancy-based agreement with, different milestones and offer them, some sort of stock options or vesting rights within business as phantom shares.
So my question is, does that affect the ownership of if it's an LLC, does it affect the member ownership? Like, do you add them to the LLC, or is this all on an operating agreement?
It can be. It really depends on the individual and what your relationship is with them. Or it could just be a contract that the business has entered into with that particular individual.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's an employment contract.
Yeah. So in the case of it getting bought in 5 years, that individual in our agreement, if we said, hey, you're going to vest over the next 5 years.
Well, I'll just keep it real.
Yeah.
When I sold my last company, we had key individuals within the company that had employment contracts with us. So part of the deal was that, if we're going to sell the company, these people have to be taken care of.
Got it. Yeah.
So it's really however you want to package it.
Yeah.
My personal opinion is, you don't want to give up
Everything. Yeah.
or a piece of it. Keep the business to where it needs to be.
Yeah.
Get in, enter into contracts, but really they need to prove themselves.
Correct.
Start giving a piece of the company to.
Yeah. Especially with a small company, like most of our listeners are going to have, a lot of larger corporations for, especially corporate level type positions, they'll offer like a stock bundle. For example, you'll come in and they'll say, hey, you're going to get this much, maybe it's like 40 grand over the next 4 years. It vests 1 year cliff, meaning you get 25% up front and then it's quarterly thereafter. And like, that's pretty common. However, in a small business, I think, I mean, if I have a small company, I don't know about, handing that kind of deal out to everybody. However, for some really key players that you want to keep around and having them have some ownership and incentive, I think you're right. It's worth throwing something out for those guys.
Yeah, and in our previous episodes, we've talked a lot about key players, talked a lot about incentivizing employees to stick around with the business to help you grow it. And this, for me personally, this is kind of one way I would incentivize my staff to stick around.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to just up and leave. Like your employees, it's so easy for them to up and leave and go to another business just because they're getting paid more.
That is correct.
And so you got to incentivize them somehow.
I think in this day and age, employees are looking for just more than compensation. What I've realized, it's, with the rise of all these millennials coming into play, they're wanting more than just a paycheck. They're looking for, a healthy environment, work-life balance. So I think there's a lot more that goes into it, just other than money.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. No, this is really interesting. It's questions we've had. It's questions I've been asked by coworkers or other people, friends that are in business. And so it's really insightful to hear your thoughts on this. Trevor, do you have any
I just was curious, being that our audience is primarily those who work in some sort of home service industry or maybe other smaller entrepreneurs, but specifically like home service industry. Are there certain pitfalls or opportunities that they should be aware of as they're, conducting their business, structuring their legal backbone? Are there any things really specifically honed into those doing service, maybe at somebody's home or other things like that? Or is it all pretty general?
I'm going to lay it out for you. They need to make sure they have their legal ducks in a row. And right now is the best time of the year to make sure you have your legal ducks in a row, because the year end is approaching. Today is October 15th, which is the last filing deadline for extensions. So right now is a great time for people to consider, if they're not a corporation or LLC, to get themselves incorporated so that come 2020, they have a fresh new start. And for specifically businesses that are service businesses working in other people's home, you want to be a corporation or LLC. You definitely want to be bonded. You want to be insured. You want to have general commercial liability insurance. So you want to definitely make sure that you align yourself with a great financial expert, tax expert. And for the legal filings of it and keeping that business in compliance, come to a reputable company such as our company, Corpnet.com, that can assist you with all these filings in any of the 50 states.
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
Nellie, this has been super awesome. Your knowledge.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And again, for anybody who's listening, it's been a pleasure sharing my knowledge with any of you. If you have any questions, check out our website at www.corpnet.com. You can pick up the phone. We can provide you with a free business consultation. Dial 1-888-449-2638, or just simply send us an email to info@corpnet.com.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, Nellie, for joining us. Thank you so much. And if you guys are listening on your favorite platform, please feel free to give us a review. We'd greatly appreciate it, as we're a growing podcast. Also, if you have recommendations for guests that we should have on our show, please email Parker or I at parker@curry.io. That's KURRY.io, or Trevor@curry.io. And we'd love to hear from you guys. And remember, the 5-star review is the best review out there.
Absolutely. Hey, you guys have a great week out there.